Derived energy again here. Hello Pyrrho, thanks for your response. So I guess it's time for round 2, America versus England. Ding ding! Okay, right, I'm going to play your video and answer to make responses to things as they naturally come up.
This is an interesting thought experiment, but I think as a thought experiment it's the thing that's asymmetrical. And I'll get to the actual asymmetry you bring up about this stuff. But the asymmetry is a willful asymmetry in the perception.
The asymmetry is willful? I'm afraid I'm going to have to beg to differ on that one. You see, it's not manufactured arbitrarily. The fact is that if you don't exist, then you cannot be deprived of anything. You cannot be deprived of the pleasant experiences in life. So that's why you can completely discount pleasant experiences as a reason, a rationale for bringing new life into the world. Whereas if you actually exist, then it is possible to regret the fact that you were born and to suffer needlessly when, if your parents had have made the decision not to bring you into the world, then you wouldn't have been exposed to that harm. So, you know, it's not a subjective willful thing here that I'm imposing on the asymmetry. The asymmetry naturally flows from the actual, valid assumptions that I'm making about reality. Right.
So, I mean, I'm fine with considering non-existent people. There is an issue there. But if you're going to use their non-existence as the reason not to count the potential positives that they would experience, then the potential negatives that they experience also can't be, taken into account. So that's an unfair thing. You can't say, well, we're not going to take into the positive but the negative. Of course, you could just feel intuitively it should be taken into account. I think the bigger...
Well, as I just explained to you, if you don't exist, then you can't regret that you were born. So there is no deprivation, there is no reason to bring that person into the world for something that they wouldn't have missed out on if they hadn't been born. I mean, do you honestly think that if someone isn't born, then they're deprived in some way? Because you're using that, as you see it, deprivation, or your perception that they are being deprived in some way as a reason to bring them into the world. But this isn't the case. If you're non-existent, then you have no desire to appreciate the positive things in life.
Issue, the material inequality here is that you can choose to end your existence while you exist, but you can't choose to begin your existence while you don't exist.
Sure, you can choose to end your existence, but how can you do that? I mean, the most painless way that springs to mind instantly is like holding a gun to your head. Your hands shaking, your forehead's sweating, your hands are sweating, you feel a great big dread in your stomach, you reflect that you're going to go into a void, and this is unsettling. You might have some kind of vague worry or concern that you might be roasted in internal damnation after you press the button. I mean, it's a horrible thing. Those brief seconds before someone takes their life kind of stretch out into an eternity of absolute unmitigating horror.
But I don't think that this goes exactly the way you've been thinking, because if somebody, let's say you have the choice of winning the lottery or not, a lot of people will tell you, hey, you don't want to win the lottery, all that money will just cost nothing but trouble. But isn't it better to have the choice? Isn't it better to have the choice? You can say no, and so you haven't lost the ability to say no, and you have gained the ability to do something else that you might choose to do. But I don't really want to justify life on the maybe you'll win the lottery kind of logic. I think that's pretty lame. The real...
You're telling me it's lame? Really? Come on. I mean, if you win the lottery, then you have choices. You can say, I don't want the lottery money, I'm going to donate it to charity. I won't bother myself and go and pick the money up. You can give it to a friend, you can give it to a beggar on the street, and you can do these things without inflicting any harm on yourself, if that is actually in reality what you want to do. But if you're born, I mean, you don't choose to be born, and then the only way to end it is either to kill yourself or to go to one of the few suicide clinics in the world where you have to, you know, be suffering a terminal illness before they'll even begin a dialogue with you.
The issue for me is that I don't take the miseries of life quite the same as someone else.
Yes, I. Personal pronoun, first person, I. But we're not talking about you and your way of dealing with your existence. We're talking about people who we have no idea about how these people's psychology will work. We have no we cannot make any assumptions about, you know, their psychological makeup or the future events that will happen to them after they're born. So it's no good you simply transposing, you know, your feelings onto these sort of people who we have no idea about. We're not talking about you. We're not. Well, I'm talking about everybody, and me and you both had a risk of, you know, suffering a terrible existence. I mean, I personally don't think that my life has been that bad, really, in relation to other people. But, you know, every time someone has a child, they cannot just simply superimpose their experiences and their anticipations of how life will be onto that person.
There's certainly intense enough miseries that I would consider and choose suicide. You know, at least hypothetically, I can imagine those situations.
Yes, I'm sure you can. I think almost most people can. I mean, but don't you see that this clearly shows that, at least under certain circumstances, non-existence, i.e. death, is preferable to existence. Whereas in the other direction, you know, if you're non-existence, then you can't be deprived. You know, I mean, just another thought experiment for you. Just imagine that some super intelligent race, you know, had plans to design a planet, and they were going to populate this planet with people who were just ecstatically happy all the time. But due to budget cuts, they had to write off this project. Now, you know, would you feel that lots of people have missed out because the plans fell through, or would you just feel they don't exist? It doesn't matter, you know, you know, they're not deprived. I mean, this is it. This is it.
But most of life's miseries that I encounter are things that I grow stronger from by learning from them. So they become assets, my experience, that help me to enjoy life. Because I've learned from the miseries, I've learned how not to cause them, how to avoid them, how to deal with what does come. And in the end, you know, sometimes there's things like this where, you know, we have to check our maturity.
Okay, so you're saying that misery and pain and suffering have positive correlates here. I mean, again, you're using I. Personal pronoun, first person, yet again. I mean, we're not talking about you. We're talking about unidentified people who may or may not exist in the future. So you cannot project your personal experiences onto these people when you have no idea how their brain is structured, how they will react to the environment, how they will respond to being a part of the human condition. And also, you're talking about the positive factors of pain and misery and challenges and suffering and all those sorts of things in terms of learning and growing and developing, so that you can minimize or reduce or eliminate these pains and suffering. But they're still gratuitous. You're taking pain and you're seeing a positive side, because you can take that pain and think to yourself, right, I'm going to use this to stop or decrease further pain. But don't you see that's a negative? I'm going to end the video here because I'm getting up to 9 minutes 50 seconds, but I'll post another response to this shortly.